Welcome to StoryModeOn. Grab a snack and settle in. This one's called The Substitute. James laid his hall pass on the kitchen counter and watched his hand shake once before it stopped. The lanyard still smelled like the rubber stamp in the main office, ink and warm plastic. Thursday. He was cleared. Room 214 was waiting. He'd spent 12 weeks on medical leave after his body stopped pretending it could hold a classroom together. Sweat through his shirt in February, air that wouldn't enter his lungs. A sophomore calling the nurse, while the rest of the class learned how to look busy. He didn't think about that morning now. He thought about his lesson planner, which he'd opened on the laptop and closed again 3 times since breakfast. The email arrived at 7:41. Principal Ortiz had written a short paragraph welcoming him back and asking him to stop by the office before first period. Standard. Then a second line. We'll also schedule a brief transition meeting next week to make sure everyone feels supported. James read it twice. Supported was a word that had started to mean other people had already discussed him. He made coffee. He chose a tie from the rack and put it on twice because the knot sat wrong the first time. His clearance letter was in the inside pocket of his jacket, folded so the crease wouldn't show. He didn't need to show it to anyone. He needed it to exist. He drove to Mapleton High the long way, past the field where the lacrosse team practiced in weather that still felt like winter. At a red light, he watched students cross and wondered if anyone in that herd of backpacks knew he'd been gone at all. Returning was the hard part, he told himself. The rest would be paperwork and lesson plans and the ordinary friction of chairs scraping back. The building smelled the same. Floor wax and old radiators and something sweet from the cafeteria line. His key still worked. That shouldn't have felt like a test. Vera Marsh was at the copier when he came off the stairwell. She looked up as if she had been listening for his footsteps. 40 maybe. Bright scarf. The kind of smile that made parents write emails with the word grateful in the subject line. James, she said his name like a reunion. You're really here. I'm cleared, he said. I know. She hugged him before he could decide whether to step back. She smelled like lemon hand soap. The kids have been asking. She handed him a stack of papers. Neat. Stapled. A note on top in her looping handwriting. Honors syllabi updates. You might want to skim. No rush. He skimmed away in the empty classroom and found due dates moved. A film day added. Participation weighted differently than he had left it. Small things. The kind that could be kindness or takeover depending on who explained them. His desk drawer had been reorganized. Paper clips in a cup that used to hold chalk. His spare red pens lined up like soldiers. On the whiteboard, in Vera's marker, still legible, "Welcome back, Mr. C." He erased it before second period. The first day was almost good. Kim Park sat in the 3rd row by the window, same as always. She didn't wave. When he introduced himself from the front of the room, she nodded once, as if confirming he was the correct version. They were halfway through Beloved. He had them open to the passage about milk and what it cost to name a thing. For 20 minutes the room sounded like his room. A boy in the back argued that Seith was protecting her children. A girl near the door said she was protecting herself from feeling. James wrote both claims on the board without picking a winner. His voice held. His hands didn't shake on the book. When the bell rang, he felt the small rush he used to feel before he learned his body could betray him in front of them. In the hall between classes, Vera passed with a stack of permission slips and called him Mr. Calder in a voice loud enough for 2 freshmen to hear. Need anything copied? I'm still on your floor till 3. I'm fine, he said. She smiled like that was the answer she had hoped for. After class, Kim waited until the room cleared. You want your old seating chart back? She asked. I didn't know it was gone. Vera liked groups. Kim's face didn't change. I kept my essay from the Friday you left, the one on the kitchen scene. You wrote in the margin that my thesis was brave but loose in the second paragraph. James looked at her. You still have that? It's in my backpack. Not an offer yet. A fact. He said, hold on to it for now. She left. He stood alone in the room and felt, for an hour, like a person returning to work instead of a story other people were telling about work. Vera emailed at lunch. So glad today went smoothly. I'm on hall duty if you need anything. The honors parents can be intense. I told them you'd need space. He hadn't asked her to tell anyone anything. Ortiz stuck his head in during 5th period prep. How's the first day? Fine. Good. Good. Ortiz had the tired eyes of a man who mediated 3 conflicts before 9 a.m. Vera's been a gift. Parents love her. That buys us time while you ease in. I'm cleared to teach. Of course. Ortiz raised both hands. Peace. Nobody's saying otherwise. The dream lasted until Monday. The email from Mrs. Alvaro arrived in James's inbox at 6:12 in the morning. Ortiz had forwarded it with one line. Let's talk when you can. Mrs. Alvaro wrote that her daughter Sophia had been thriving under Ms. Marsh's supportive approach. Since Mr. Calder's return, Sophia felt anxious about participating. His comments on her last essay had been harsh and personal. She attached a screenshot of a rubric line circled in red. She used the phrase mental health twice without saying James's leave had been medical. He remembered Sophia's essay. Vague thesis. Strong sentences buried in summary. He had given her a B- and written push here beside a paragraph that repeated the plot instead of arguing with it. Vera had later changed the grade in the portal to a B+. James discovered it when he logged in to enter the quiz scores and found 3 late assignments marked complete that he hadn't seen. He meant to go to Ortiz's office. At the stairwell he turned the other way and ended up in the copier room, standing at the machine without paper while his throat tightened. The machine hummed with its green ready light. Someone had left a half-stapled packet titled Mindful Transitions on the counter. His name wasn't on it, but his leave was, between lines about compassion and capacity. His face looked pale and formal in the window glass, a man in a tie who could be angry or sick depending on who described him. He pressed his thumb into the edge of the counter until the bone hurt. Vera found him. You got the Alvaro email, she said, not a question. Sophia's grade was changed. I gave her credit for the revision she turned into me. Vera's voice was gentle. She was trying, James. I didn't think you'd want to punish effort after everything you've been through. Everything you've been through, as if his leave were a weather event that had happened to the department. I would have wanted to see the revision, he said. Her eyes filled, not theatrically, just enough. I was trying to protect your relationship with them. He apologized before the sentence had finished forming in his head. I didn't mean to sound ungrateful. She touched his arm. You're tired. That's allowed. In the hallway between periods, Ms. Chen fell into step beside him. Vera says you're being so brave, she said, coming back this fast. I was cleared. Sure. Ms. Chen meant it kindly. She really saved that honors section. The parents were talking about pulling kids. The following day, Kim left a folded paper on his keyboard during the passing bell. No note. He had known what it was and tucked it behind the portal printout in his folder. James ate lunch in his car with the engine off. He finished a granola bar without remembering he'd opened it. He skipped the staff room and heard his own name through the door. Laughter. Vera's voice. He was struggling before he left. I think we all saw it. He kept walking with his soup still cold in its container. His ears burned. Part of him wanted to push the door open and demand witnesses. Part of him remembered Ortiz's tired eyes, and the words supported, and knew the room would close around Vera like weather. He had learned that much in 12 weeks away from the building. Illness made you a guest in your own life. Vera had made herself the host. He opened his classroom door and taught Beloved. He called on a boy who hadn't raised his hand. He wrote a question on the board and didn't erase it when the answer came out wrong. Small acts. His hands belonged to him for 53 minutes before the bell sent chairs scraping back. Sophia stayed after class, with her hair in a careful ponytail and her mother's email printed on crisp paper. Ms. Marsh said you'd probably want to talk to me, she said. James sat on the edge of his desk. I want you to know I read your essay carefully. It felt like you were angry at me. I wasn't angry. I was asking you to argue harder. Sophia's mouth tightened. Mom thinks I should transfer to Vera's study group. She says it's a safer environment. James heard what safer meant. Not the hallway. Him. I can't stop your mother from choosing what she thinks is best, he said. His voice came out flatter than he wanted. All I can do is tell you what I think you're capable of." Sophia left without answering. At 3:30 he sat in the small conference room with the broken blinds. Ortiz, Ms. Doyle from the union, Vera in a chair closer to the door than his. James brought his laptop and a folder with the portal log printed out. Dates, substitute access. Grades altered. He had circled them in blue so he wouldn't have to improvise. Ortiz started with gratitude. Gratitude for Vera. Gratitude for James's commitment. The language of a school that wanted the year to end without a lawsuit. Mrs. Alvaro's email was on the table in a manila sleeve. Another from a father who liked Vera's warmth. A printout of James's leave form with the medical code, blacked out, but the length visible. "We're not here to shame anyone," Ortiz said. Vera nodded. "James knows I respect him." Ms. Doyle said, "Let's focus on supports." Vera spoke about the honors, parents, about students who had been frightened when James raised his voice before he left. James hadn't raised his voice. He had put his hand on the desk and felt the room tilt. She spoke about continuity, about how the kids needed stability while he found his footing. Vera pressed a tissue to her eyes and kept talking. Heat climbed his neck. He began looking for his own mistake before anyone at the table asked him to name one. For a moment he almost believed her version, because it was softer than his memory. Maybe he had been distant. Maybe the panic had started before the nurse arrived, in the way he stopped hearing a girl's question mid-sentence. Maybe needing leave proved he wasn't safe with children. The thoughts arrived in Vera's cadence, reasonable and concerned, and his chest tightened as if the air had thinned again. Ms. Doyle slid a bottle of water toward him without comment. He unscrewed the cap and didn't drink. Ortiz slid a proposal across the table. Vera would co-teach the honors section through May. Shared grades. Shared parent contact. A bridge, the document said. "It's not a demotion," Ortiz said. "It's a bridge." James's pen was in his hand. He didn't remember picking it up. Ortiz said, "Page 2 is the initial." James lifted the proposal to turn it. The folded paper shifted in his folder. Red ink showed at the edge. Brave but loose. His handwriting. His reading. Not the version of him Vera had been passing around the building. He set the pen down. "I won't co-teach," he said. Ortiz blinked. "James, I was cleared to return to my section, and I'm not signing anything that puts someone else between me and my students." He opened the folder. His voice shook on the next words, and then steadied, because shaking wasn't the same as wrong. "Grades in my class were changed without my consent while I was on leave. 3 assignments. Substitute access. Here." Vera leaned forward. "Those kids were drowning. Then they should have turned in revisions to me when I came back. They were afraid you'd snap." James looked at her. "That's the story you've been telling." The room went very still. Ms. Doyle watched him with professional neutrality. Ortiz rubbed his forehead. "I'm not asking anyone to choose sides in the hallways," James said. "I'm asking for my classroom back, my grading, my contact with parents about my assignments, and for Vera to stop mentoring in room 214 during my prep." Vera's smile returned in pieces. Concern first, then pity. "I only ever wanted what was best for them." "I know," James said. He meant it and hated that he meant it. "That's why this has to stop." Ortiz exhaled. "We'll adjust the mentoring schedule. Co-teachers off the table if you're set." "I'm set." That night he wrote 3 versions of a reply to Mrs. Alvaro and deleted all of them. The meeting had given him his section back. It hadn't changed what people said in the halls. On Wednesday, a sophomore he didn't teach stopped him near the vending machines. "Ms. Marsh says you're doing better," the boy said, cheerful and innocent. "She says you had a hard year." James said, "I'm fine," and heard how thin it sounded. The next day Vera was at the staff room table, seated in the good chair by the window, with 2 colleagues leaning in to hear a story about her honors class. James walked past with his folder and took the long way to the stairwell. Mrs. Alvaro emailed Ortiz again. Sophia moved to a study hall during 4th period instead of transferring sections. A small loss dressed as compromise. Kim stopped by after the bell on Thursday. "I heard there was a meeting," she said. "There was." "Did you need the essay?" He tapped the folder on his desk. You left it on my keyboard. It helped. She nodded once and left without making him explain. After the last bell, he locked the door and stood in room 214, while the cleaner rattled past with his cleaning cart in the hall. The seating chart on the wall was his again. Rows, not pods. He had changed it on Monday and no one had complained. The window spot where Vera had kept her mentor bin now held only a spare dictionary and a cracked apple left from someone's lunch, brown at the stem. He put the hall pass back in the cup by the door. His cup. He slid Kim's essay into the folder with the portal log and labeled the tab with a date in his own handwriting, the numbers firm enough to read in bad light. Outside, lacrosse practice shouted across the field. Inside, the radiator clicked. The room smelled like dry erase marker and old books, not lemon soap. He hadn't destroyed Vera. He hadn't made the parents love him again. He had named one thing that was true when every polite version of the story asked him to dissolve. He turned off the lights and took the stairs slowly, hand on the rail, breath ordinary in his chest. Tomorrow he would mark quizzes. Tomorrow Sophia might look at him or might not. Vera had worked in concern and forwarded emails, not raised voices, and he knew the difference now. That was enough to walk back in. That's it for the story. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more.